welcome to TTV. You're watching Let's Talk Education. This week's episode is going to be very interesting as we have got a set of some experienced guests joining us who belongs from a very distinguished schools here in the Sultanate of Oman. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Siva Kumar Manikam, who's the Chairman Board of Directors for Indian School Oman. And then we have Mr. Amir Masood, who's Vice Chairman, Board of Directors for Pakistan School System. And lastly, we have Mr. Craig Williamson, who's the Head of School, ABA Oman International School. Thank you so much to you all for joining us and for being so patient today. It's a pleasure to have you all here for our show today.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Siva Kumar, and we'll be talking about how you see in your experience that COVID-19 has shifted the dynamics of education sector.
Exactly, the COVID-19 has changed the way how the education, have been delivered to our kids. I would say that it has a kind of two-folded impact on our system. Positively, yes, we understand that a new medium of instruction. I mean, remote teaching is becoming one of the accepted mode of delivery. On the other hand, particularly for those kids who are non-vaccinated and who requires a classroom environment to continue learning, so they are impacted. And we are taking lots of effort to make sure that although the teaching happens through online, they receive all kinds of dimensions of learning. But still, it has been a challenge. But we think that in near future things will settle down and we will have kind of regular teaching taking place. And particularly in higher classes, we do see that we almost reached kind of near normalcy, where we are conducting assessments, and we completed 2 academic years. Teaching, assessment, promotion, everything happened, through online. So now we expect the same thing for other kids as well.
Right. Mr. Amir, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, exactly. As we all know that nobody was well prepared for this pandemic, and nobody has ever faced this type of situation. So the same like other sectors, the education sector got affected with the corona and this COVID lockdowns. So, but it has opened many opportunities as well. So when it started, the lockdown started, so we were not prepared for the digital education. But thanks to our IT professionals, as we were having qualified IT people in our school, so they prepared the infrastructure, they started training of the teachers. So really it affected in negative way, then it opened many opportunities as well. So this is which we got the opportunity from the corona, that we are getting some new things as well. So especially the junior section students, they got more affected because their face-to-face learning is very important, because not only the academic learning, but they need physical activities and then some creative ways of learning, which they missed due to this COVID situation.
Right. Mr. Craig, would you like to add something too?
Sure. Well, I concur with what my colleagues have said. COVID is certainly not something anybody wanted, and we're still dealing with it right now, and hopefully the light is at the end of the tunnel, and we're almost over there. It's had positive and negative effects. Parents want their children in school, children want to be in school, and teachers want children in school. I don't think that's ever going to change no matter how good we get with online instruction. Every school is at a different place in their journey, and I concur with what you just said, sir, that no matter where you are in your journey, it has the positive. It's actually brought us to a better place maybe over here that we weren't before. We were fortunate. We are fortunate. Our students are one-to-one laptop program, and our teachers are using it. We had the infrastructure to do so, but this pushed us to go to a whole new level. And I think every school has been pushed to go to a whole new level using technology and integrating the classroom. So although our kids, we want them there ideally, it's given us some opportunities over here. So hopefully when we get back, we can have both.
Right. So if I'm not wrong, that COVID actually has given the opportunity to take that leap of faith that was missing before, like people were not so confident going to digital. And now with this kind of pandemic happening, there was kind of an opportunity availed by the education sector.
I think human beings are resilient, and I think we can't forget that I don't like saying we're in an industry, because schools, I don't like thinking of them as industries or businesses. We're in the business, though, of human beings, right? We work with human beings. That's what we do. And human beings are resilient. So when faced with a challenge like COVID has put upon us, we have to be resilient and we have to be flexible and we have to figure it out because we don't have any other option. So this has given us an opportunity and said, you have COVID, that's non-negotiable, that's what's in place. How are you going to deal with it? And so every school's had to deal with it and improve in areas and think about things that we didn't have to think about before. So we do have some improvement that are going to come out of this, some positive for sure.
Dr. Sivakumar, talking on the lines of challenges, I'm sure it wasn't really easy when you had to move from a regular school to online education. How do you think that parents, the teachers, and the students adapted to the new changes?
Luckily, in Indian school system, we have been preparing our teachers as well as students to use ICT for the learning process. So there were some initiatives from board of directors to introduce ICT in the classroom. Just before the onset of pandemics, we started introducing webinars. So teachers were well prepared, and luckily, the moment pandemic started, we were able to move, to online-based education. On the other hand, after almost one academic year got over, we collected feedback from parents, teachers, as well as students. To our surprise, they were all satisfied. But what we could find out is a kind of screen time, emotional well-being of students, work-life balance. These are something, we understood that it is taking a kind of a toll, in our regular, activities. So then we corrected, we scheduled in schools happen in such a way that to give, sufficient time away from screen. And we had flexibility of timetabling starting from early morning till late evening. So we had breaks in between, and teachers were given kind of additional counseling and other training sessions where they will be able to cope up with the pressures on a virtual medium. So initially it was difficult, but slowly it became a kind of, we understood this is a kind of new normal, so things are going on well. But the feedback really helped us, and we do have control over screen time for our kids as well as our teachers, and the parent support is really amazing. They could help. Now we can see that even a student of class 3, he knows that how to send an email, how to receive an email, how to join a Google Classroom. So these things become kind of, we never expected. If at all, if there wasn't a pandemic, I don't think, we would be using it flawlessly like this.
Right, exactly. Yes. Like we mentioned before, that it gave us opportunity to take that leap of faith that we would have never imagined. Imagine a 3-year-old now writing emails and receiving emails, communicating through emails. So yeah, that's one thing to look at. Now, Mr. Amir, how challenging do you think, Pakistan school system, was it challenging for Pakistan school systems, parents and teachers and students?
Okay, as my colleague said, that it was challenging for school as well as for the parents as well. So the parents were not well prepared, as the gadgets demands were high. Like if one parent is having 2 or 3 kids, so he was supposed to provide 3 gadgets to each student, and likewise they have to provide a separate rooms for each student, so they can easily take their online classes. But of course, it has given many opportunities as well. Like my colleague said, that the kids has learned a lot. They are now expert in the computers. They even know more than their parents. So now they can independently operate the computers. They know how to open the Google Classroom or the Zoom classes. And even it has made a more effective communication between parents and teachers. Like they have created their WhatsApp group of each class student's parent and the teachers. They can effectively communicate. So like a day before, they're sending the links of their Google Classrooms or the Zoom IDs. So they are more interacting with the parents. So which will help even after the pandemic, which will be very effective. So like they will be in touch with the parents or for any like issues or anything they want to inform to the parent. So they will make their job easier. So like they can update for each and everything. So earlier the parent was not aware what is going on in school, what our kids are doing. So like, as I told you, that it has opened many new opportunities and it has made many things more effective.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, before you had to wait until parent-teachers meeting in the middle of the term or in the end of the term.
Exactly.
So that's when you get to know the progress of your child or where he's lacking or where he's progressing.
Yeah,
But now with this technology, yes, it has given definitely a kind of opportunity to everyone. Mr. Craig, how challenging was it for ABA Oman International School to introduce to these or adapt to these new changes?
I don't think it was one of tools. The tools were there, from Wi-Fi, internet, and the equipment that was necessary to make it all happen. That was in place. The fundamental knowledge and understanding of the teachers and the students, that was in place. What was different is just the structure and how it was done on a day-to-day basis. And I would say when the parents experienced, it was great. We're always trying to educate our parents on how school runs a lot differently than how it did when you went to school. When I went to school, I sat in rows and I listened to the teacher talk off a chalkboard and I'd write notes, and every Friday I took a test. That was school. We don't teach like that anymore. Our kids in an IB program are sitting around desks and they're collaborative and they're discussing and they're doing things. And for us, what was an adjustment, I think, was our parents who were at home sitting with their children, listening to how lessons were taught. And it was one of the greatest things we had because they were educated about how those lessons transpired day to day rather than just maybe thinking, oh, it was like how I went to school. It was the best open door policy we had so parents could actually see what lessons looked like in an IB education. So that was really good. But to get parents as to be part of the day-to-day experience, that was probably the biggest challenge. Because no longer were they dropping their children off and saying, okay, go to school, and then pick them up at the end of the day. Now they had to sit with their children. They had to make sure their children were attending lessons. They had to make sure their children were prepared. They were the classroom management at home. And that was a huge shift in comparison to what it usually is.
I remember talking to a lot of parents during the pandemic time, and they all had one thing to say. They were saying that it felt like they are back to school now. The exams that the kids were taking, they felt like they were taking the exams, and monitoring the children in front of the screen, making sure they are sitting there and being attentive. Now, when I'm talking about the screen time, Dr. Sivakumar, you already mentioned that, the Indian school system is already monitoring the screen time. On one hand, we say that, screen time is very important for children. And on the other hand, we have online education, then there is no way out but to have an online education. What kind of feedback was there initially when you had to tell parents and the teachers and the students that online education is going to be the way forward from now on?
Exactly. Initially, what happened when we started online classes, our objective was to connect teachers and students. So we were focusing on that and serious about delivering, on meeting the learning objectives. But of late, we understood that everybody started sitting in front of computers and doing all sort of things on the screen. For example, watching YouTube or communicating with the friends and chatting. So it went to the extent even after the school hours. Kids were, glued to that, system, and we understood that something wrong. So we immediately, in order to reduce that, we introduced kind of physical activities. So we do have physical education teachers and yoga trainers and all these people giving kind of additional physical activities to make sure that our students are away from screen. So, and then again, what happened, in order to maintain this, particularly for Indian schooling system, we have got 21 schools, different schools with different resources, different number of students. It was a bit challenging, but fortunately, we have got each school having got its own school management committee, it's a parent representative. So they understood what is good for the particular schools. So they took a decision on timing. The duration and breaks in between. So they were involved in the decision-making process. Then it went on smoothly. Now we have got a kind of an equilibrium where what is comfortable for teachers and parents and students is running smoothly.
How is it for you, Mr. Amir?
Yeah, for us, it was the same. As the screen time is the big issue for all the parents. As we know that all of our kids, most of the time they spend front of the mobile phones or front of the TV watching YouTube videos. So they spend more of their time for watching these screens. So it was also when this online studies started. So then these are the additional things which they are going to sit front of the screens. So Pakistan school system, what we have done, we have just introduced the breaks. So we are not continuously taking the classes. Just like 30-minute class, then break of 10-15 minutes, go and just take some round. and then come back. So this was the only solution, but the screen time is a big challenge for everyone.
Was it the same case with you, Mr. Craig?
Same thing. I won't repeat because I agree with what both of them said. Screen time is definitely a challenge because now, like you said, personal use of screens, and now all of a sudden you have to do this because you need it for schooling, and all that together drastically increased time. The one comment I would add, take it from a different angle maybe, is the amount of screen time for teachers. And so our teachers in a normal classroom setting are not sitting and staring at a screen. And now their work environment changed from one in which they're walking around classrooms and dealing with people face to face, turned into one in which they spent 6 to 7 hours a day looking at a screen, plus then the work they had to do online to answer emails or do their work and presentations or whatever they were creating over here. So their screen time drastically increased, and we had to really take a look at the health and wellness perspective from a teacher's perspective, because I can't say enough, if it weren't for the teachers, we'd all be in a bad place right now. They've done an amazing job.
So is it true, I'm glad that you mentioned about the teachers and the screen time, because teachers are really not used to of teaching through screen. They have to see the students. They are there in the classroom. Talking about the health and wellness that you mentioned, do you think that teachers had to actually go through a chaotic emotional change when the screen time was introduced to them?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think they had to, we typically in any industry or job or whatnot, you pay more or you get paid more based on experience. And with teachers, it's no different. And so they have experience doing what they do. And although things change a little bit, there's still this foundation of what they do every year, and they build upon that experience, and they have their toolkit, and they're able to go, and you pay for that experience. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, what you're used to doing and what is your norm all of a sudden is gone. And now we want you to shift completely onto a computer screen, and we want you to try and get the same results and the same level of education and educational rigor and just emotional support for your children through a computer. And you have to do that for month after month after month, having never done it before like that. Maybe you did it for a day, but now you need to teach a whole unit through that. And that's from nothing to that. Again, you got to celebrate the teachers around the world.
Absolutely. Mr. Amr, did you have the same experience when it came to?
We call our teacher a true warrior of the COVID pandemic, same like the medical professional, because they have transformed themselves from the physical education to digital education. So it was quite challenging because they were not used to it, but they have transformed themselves, and they learned new techniques, new technologies, and they have even spent more time than the normal routine. Because
Right.
like in the what we did in Pakistan school, we started recording the lessons as well, and then uploading to the YouTube. Like the student who miss the classes, so they can refer to those YouTube lessons. So like in the evening time also, they have to spend their time to record these lessons. So like they have dedicated their times, and we appreciate what they have done for the school.
Right, right. Dr. Sivakumar, what do you have to say about the roles of teachers?
Well, the role of teachers during this time is really, very appreciable, and they were quickly adopting to the new methods of teaching, particularly, different disciplines, language teachers, mathematics teachers, and they all had their own problem. Difficulties in using ICT for teaching. But the moment we transformed to online-based teaching, quickly they adopted. It is not just making PowerPoints and then delivering it, but rather they were so, caring and, showing concerns towards each child's, individual problems, and they were trying to address and help them as well. So really, they deserve, great appreciation during this time. And again, assessments and feedback and everything, the loop, it got closed because of their involvement. And it's really appreciable. But now we do see that, this potential can be tapped. Even after the pandemic, we'll be able to use this kind of experience. So a component of teaching can be continued online so that we can capitalize, these advantages.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dr. Sivakumar, not talking about Indian school Oman, but in general, in your experience, what do you think was the most tough age group to, handle when it came to online education?
Yes. As I said earlier, the first thing is the unvaccinated group. particularly here, grades lesser than 7th standard, from KG to class 6, say for example, and they were the one who had difficulty in attending on-site classes. And yes, these are the most difficult group. In addition with that, the special children who were really missing their interactions and classroom environment, and they could not get actual complete education through online. So, but fortunately our Center for Special Education started on-site classes, so they are attending now, as of now. But higher classes, I mean, the impact wasn't that much. So they were able to complete kind of learning process, maybe excepting the practical components where they need to do practicals in the laboratory. Those are the components which got affected. But other than that, the written or the theoretical components, well, they were delivered at best during this online.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Amir, in your experience, what age bracket did you see it being the most difficult in terms of managing?
Yeah, actually, the junior section, like the new classes, KG1, KG2, these standards, it was very challenging for them as well as for the teachers, because they were waiting from long time. Like they were like, if I give my example, my younger son, he was asking every time when I will go to school. When the time came, the pandemic started, and then he came to know that now I don't have to go to school, I have to learn online. So it is very difficult to hold them on the desk to stare at the screen and learn something, because they learn through the different activities. Like through entertaining, interactive activities they learn. They don't learn like college students. So this was really challenging for the younger students especially.
I think during this pandemic, if I'm not wrong, everybody would agree that now we understand the struggle of teachers, what they go through with the young ones at school. How was it at ABA Oman International School, Mr. Craig?
For us, I think it gets harder the younger that you go. I'd say that because the older children have the ability, when they're teenagers and that, they have more control over their own social life. So if they can't access whatever at school, they can manage to find ways to connect and have a social environment outside of school, even if it's electronic or whatnot, but they're more independent, so they're able to do that. The younger you go, the more dependent they are on their parents. And therefore, their parents have to set up those extra play dates and those extra support groups for the kids to get together because they're not naturally getting that at school. So I look at this and I applauded our teachers in one, and now I'll applaud our parents over here. Our parents are like our partners within this, more so than they've ever been. It's not a situation where they drop their kids off at school and they walk away. Now they're a part of the process. They're a partnership with us in the school and seeing what has to happen, and we've really interacted and formed a great bond with our parents. I can't applaud them enough as well.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Talking about parents and teachers, and now about online education, and as we say, the integrated form of education, which is the new normal, as you all said, during COVID. Do you think it's going to be staying for a while? Like we'll be seeing more online education, or are we going to go back to regular classes, Mr. Amir?
See, for higher studies, the online education will be the option. But for schools, only online education will not work when the things will become normal. Because from school, they don't only learn the academics. They get the advantage of physical activities like the sports, which is very important for their mental health and physical health. Then they learn the coexistence, they learn the disciplines. So these are the most important things. These are the most important thing, which is as important as your academics. So these are the things which I don't think so, which is the only online will be the solution for the school, especially for the schools. It will be the add-on flavor, like it will give advantage to the teachers so that they can teach more effectively. Like the new technologies, by using a new technologies, they can record their lesson and then they can upload so that the parents or the students can refer it later on. Right. So this will be the additional option for the teachers, right. But it will not be the only option for future learning.
Right. Dr. Sivakumar, what do you say?
Yes, actually, we are seeing a kind of a hybrid mode of teaching hereafter. Actually, since we have got another alternative platform available for us, I think we will be continuously utilizing this because you don't have to travel and you don't have to waste your time in moving around. Therefore, you can make use of this medium as an effective mode of transaction. Of course, this may vary from class to class and from level to level, but I think that we should make use of this opportunity so that we can focus on other learning areas when doing in the classroom.
Right.
So online teaching can be utilized for meeting learning objectives concerned with subjective contents, whereas to extend and particularly assessment is the ICT tools are very robust and very useful for us to conduct assessments. So therefore now we are all equipped with digital devices to connect with the schools. I think we need to continuously engage this kind of approaches to make our education very effective.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Craig, do you as well see online education as the future?
I see it as what we've experienced is becoming an enhancement, but not the norm. I think it's the exception, not the norm. I think there are many examples we can come up with. Traditionally, if kids had a project to work together on outside, they'd pick up the phone, or parents would have to coordinate them and drive them and drop them off at a person's house and things like that, where it didn't necessarily need that. Whereas now kids they have the tools and the experience where they can get together as a group, flip open their laptops, and they can be communicating in a group without having to travel all around the city. So there's enhancements to the experience. I think another thing that a fringe benefit that we're experiencing, getting an enhancement, is that if a child's sick, they're still capable, but they have a cold. Not COVID, but just regular, normal sick. The flu, as we used to refer to it. We're setting up our new campus so we've got a new campus coming out of Irfan, and this has taught us how are we looking at those new campus and how are we looking at the classrooms. And one of the things we're looking at is how to take what we have right now, like our Apple TV setups and our Wi-Fi, and can we project a camera at times to project that lesson at home in a better way, just as a norm. So if a child's home, they can actually just click a button and be there in the class. And so that's something the kid before would just be at home and they just have to wait and get something maybe at an email, but that's as best as they're going to get. Now they can actually be engaged even if they can't participate. The same as the teachers. If a teacher has a cold, but is stable to work but doesn't want to get everyone sick, they might be able to teach their classes from home for all the kids who are at school, and they don't end up with a substitute teacher, they actually just end up with their real teacher, it just does electronic. So again, not the norm, but an enhancement.
Right. Do you believe that learning online is as effective?
I think it becomes less effective the younger you go. I think the older that a student gets, they're more independent, they are able to understand consequences of not doing their work, they understand what the result will be if they don't put in the time and the energy, more so than a younger child. And therefore, I think it's harder to motivate and inspire younger children through a computer screen. Older children, they can figure it out, much like a university student.
Right. Mr. Ramar, what do you believe?
I believe that it is not as effective as physical education, but it is effective for the higher classes. Like if you are taking admission somewhere in the university in US or UK, you can take online classes and you can get the degree of those universities. So this will be the new normal, especially for the higher classes, but not for the junior classes or the junior sections or the school level. But yeah, it will be effective for the higher studies, not for the school level.
Right. Dr. Sivakumar, your opinion on this?
Yeah, actually, I would like to share one of my experiences where we try to understand the dynamics of this online teaching. What happened in our schools, we are training our kids to use pen and paper. Ask them to write and then submit like a kind of notebook, homework, etc. During this online teaching, almost we stopped using papers. So they were all writing and submitting their work like that. So what we thought is, we introduced a touch typing course to enable our kids to type faster, just as a kind of self-learning course, and we allowed our students to learn some basics of touch typing and take some online assessment and get it qualified. Surprisingly, within the introduction of this course, within 2-3 days, and almost like 12,000 Indian students, they reached the typing speed of as high as 30 words per minute. So what we understood is our kids are, very eager to learn something new. Earlier they were focusing on writing. The moment they started typing, they took it as a challenge. They started using a touch typing method, which helped them to improvise their spellings and vocabulary, etc. So they quickly adopted. Now we see that our children are going to have kind of touch typing course regularly available within the curriculum.
Right.
So these are some new avenues, available the moment we go with ICT based or online based teaching, and it is really going to help them to equip them as a 21st century learner.
Yes.
So that is how we succeeded in these cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I know that, I said that during COVID, I had parents talking about going back to school because they had to spend more time with their children, making sure that they're getting their lessons. There was another thing that was brought up by parents, from certain schools, and that was the fee structure. A lot of parents argue that, with the classes being moved to online or with the limited attendance for certain age group or certain classes, the fees remain the same. What is your intake on that, Mr. Amir?
Actually, this was the challenge, as the parents were insisting that now we have to spend more to buy gadgets and we have to spend more time with our kids. So you are teaching online, but it was difficult to convince them that we have the same infrastructure, we have the same expenses, we have to pay the rent, we have to pay the salaries. So then it became like normal. They understood, and then some of the parents, they left the countries and they didn't pay it, but for that we can't do anything. But those who are here, they cooperate with us. So it was okay with us, but it was really challenging. It was really challenging to convince the parent about this situation.
Dr. Siva Kumar, did Indian School Oman also experience the same situation?
Exactly. We also had a similar situation, but the parents' support was really awesome. They really understood the situation because, our Indian schooling system is a community school. So therefore, we depend on students' fee to pay teachers. And teachers' salary is like 80% of income is utilized in paying teachers' salary. And therefore, teachers were engaged. Actually, teachers were working more during this pandemic times than normal times. Parents understood, and at the same time, we are very, we are helping parents, those who are not able to pay fees. We are offering scholarship. We are giving an option for paying later, so that their education, the kids' education, is not impacted.
Right.
So individual parents are approaching board and school management to seek some kind of support. We never stopped any child attending the classes. So we are accommodating, because of the pandemics, many people, particularly those people who are running businesses and their economic condition is really deteriorated. So therefore, in order to help them, we allow them to pay, later, and there are huge, fee defaulters in our system, but still we are able to run successfully with the support of parents.
Right. Mr. Craig, did you have a similar situation?
Yeah, so no one wants to pay for a full price if they feel they're not getting a full service or whatever it is. And that's totally understandable. I think we're privileged in the sense that our school's a nonprofit school. So it means two things. One, 100% of all tuition fees go to supporting the education. There is not an owner, there's not a board, there's no one who's making money. All the money that gets paid goes towards the students, and as you said, about 80% of that goes to pay the teachers. The other 20% keeps just the regular bills, whether it's the rent or you have to pay, or the whatever bills you have to pay, and those don't typically go away all that much. Also, the second part of it is our fees are very transparent. So where the money comes in and where it gets spent, the whole community knows and they can see it. It's transparent. So there's no hidden agenda or hidden amount of money. I think it comes down to that 80% of the teachers. If that money is not there and you don't pay your teachers, then you don't have teachers to provide any education. So whether it's online, in face-to-face, you need the human beings to actually be there to teach the kids. And no one asked for the pandemic. but everybody still wants the best teachers teaching their kids. And the only way you can get the best teachers teaching your kids is to pay them the salary to do it. So without that salary, there's no teaching. And without teaching, there's no school. Right. So that's the rock and hard place we're in.
Yeah, right. So yeah, like you all said that it was very difficult or challenging to convince parents that although that, the education has been moved online, the structure, the curriculum, the efforts, the hard work remains the same. Now, my last question for you all is, do you see it moving from disruption to recovery anytime soon? Mr. Amir?
Yes, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. So we are almost, I can say that at the end of the pandemic. So things are opening. So, but the recovery will take little time. But of course, we have learned many new things. And thanks to the technology, which helped us to overcome this challenge, because there were a lot of challenges, but the technology was matured enough so that most of the things were already available in the market, like the high performance gadgets and high speed internet was already there. Just imagine if it could happen in 10 year or 15 year back. Yeah. So it could be a big challenge. But thanks to the technology, like the video conferencing was already in place. So we just adopted. The things are already there. The technology was already there. We just adopted that. So hopefully that it will recover, but it will take little time, those who suffered during the pandemic period. So for them it will take time. But things will become normal as early as this pandemic ends. So things will become normal.
Right.
With the add-on learnings.
Right. Dr. Sivakumar, how do you see it?
Yeah, actually, we have initiated a kind of a study to understand the learning loss, what happened to our kids for past 2 years. So now we are trying to understand what kind of additional support is required. We do see a reopening happening now. So within next few months, we can see a kind of near normalcy. So now we are preparing ourselves to understand what they have actually lost. So there is a learning recovery. I mean, in order to meet what is lost during this time. So we are trying to simulate and those environments for our kids, so that once they come out, they can have a complete learning experience. Particularly the counselors, the school counselors are helping us a lot to help both students as well as the teachers to manage this difficult time. But in addition with that, I also would like to thank the Ministry of Education, who are really supporting and helping us to run the schools. Even for example, during lockdown time, when we had board examinations and entrance examinations, and we had to conduct a kind of practical examinations on site, where Ministry of Education really helped us. So they were supporting and also giving time to time, additional instructions and explaining about health protocols to be followed. So they were very supportive. With that support, I think we are doing well. And hopefully things will be normal soon.
Hopefully, and now with the rollout of vaccination too, so I see things moving back to normal really soon. Mr. Cray, your last take on, do you see it moving from disruption to recovery soon?
Well, I'd like to reiterate what you said, sir. The Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, what a job those guys have. Everything's been changing every minute for them. I know everybody turns to them for, I want an answer, but every day they have to deal with a new circumstance as well. And they've been working with us throughout this whole pandemic, and they've been extremely supportive, and I'm extremely grateful for them. Where are we now? I'd like to think we're at the lights at the end of the tunnel. And as far as gaps analysis, I mean, let's not forget, we're in the business of education. We are a non-selective school. We will take children into, say, grade 5 who may only be reading at a grade 3 level. That's normal. We're built to have kids come in. They're not robots. It's not a machine. All kids have different levels of where they're at. And we take those kids wherever they are and we grow them and nurture them to where they need to be. We're always looking for the gaps. This is just a more extreme gap, but this is what we're built to do.
Right. Thank you so much to each one of you for joining us and taking up time. I know it's the middle of the week. It's morning time and you all have been so patient with us today. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have each one of you on our show today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. For more interesting videos, stay tuned and keep watching TTV.